Ragu Classic Alfredo may be in your pantry right now, and the second ingredient is soybean oil. Not butter, not cream. There is no federal definition of Alfredo sauce, so the front of the package can promise anything. One jar I checked costs $5.99 and has no dairy in it at all. The weird part isn't the cheap jar, it's the expensive one. I'll show you 3 that still use real butter and cream, including one from a recipe that goes back to 1896. So today we're walking through 8 Alfredo brands you should walk right past, and 3 that are actually worth your cart. Real Alfredo is 3 things: butter, cream, and Parmesan. That's it. And every one of those 3 has a legal definition in this country. Federal law says butter has to be at least 80% milk fat. Heavy cream has to be at least 36% milk fat. Parmesan has to be cured for at least 10 months. Those are real standards with real numbers behind them. Now here is the part nobody explains in the aisle. Butterfat is the single most expensive thing in the dairy case because butter, cream, and cheese are all fighting over the same fat. Every gallon of cream a sauce company buys is a gallon the butter plant and the cheese plant wanted too. Parmesan makes it worse. 10 months of aging means 10 months of paying rent on cheese that isn't earning a dime yet, plus the weight it loses drying out in that warehouse. Soybean oil has none of those problems. It costs pennies, it never separates, it doesn't need refrigeration, and it will sit in a jar for 2 years without changing. Same for cornstarch, same for xanthan gum. So a company can build something that looks like Alfredo, pours like Alfredo, and clings to pasta like Alfredo for a fraction of what the real ingredients cost. So what stops a company from swapping one for the other? Nothing. There is no FDA standard of identity for Alfredo sauce. Butter is defined, cream is defined, Parmesan is defined, Alfredo is not. The only rule that still tells you the truth is the ingredient order rule, Title 21, Section 101.4, which says ingredients get listed heaviest first. That means the front label can say old-fashioned, homestyle, authentic, Tuscan, whatever it wants, while the back label quietly puts water in first place. Turn the package around. The order is the only honest sentence on the jar. And later I'll show you a 60-second test you can run in a coffee mug that tells you whether what you bought behaves like butter or behaves like glue. Brand number 8, Great Value Alfredo Pasta Sauce. This is the jar you grabbed because it was under $2 and you were already annoyed about the rest of the receipt. 16 ounces, $1.92 at Walmart. 10,000 people bought one yesterday. So there's a real chance it's in your pantry door right now. Look at the ingredient list. Water, cream, then sunflower oil, then modified cornstarch. Parmesan cheese does not show up until after both of those, sitting behind the oil and the thickener. Keep reading and you find cellulose gum, xanthan gum, guar gum, locust bean gum, and carrageenan. That is 5 different thickening agents in one jar. There is also something listed as dairy product solids, which is not cream, not butter, and not cheese. Poured hot, it's thin and a little slick. Cooled, it goes pasty and coats your teeth. The gums are doing the job butterfat used to do, which is why it feels smooth in your mouth but tastes like almost nothing on the way down. That's the trick with gums. They can copy the texture of fat. They cannot copy the flavor of it because flavor lives in the fat itself. The reviews say it plainly. One verified buyer this March wrote, "Watery, zero flavor." Another wrote, "Doesn't really taste like cheese." And an older one that stuck with me said the recipe used to be good and got ruined, which is a sentence you see under a lot of cheap grocery products right around the time a formula gets reworked. And look, I'm not going to pretend a $2 jar owes you Italy. It doesn't. Cheap food has a place, and this is a cheap product with a cheap price on it, which is the most honest thing on this entire list. If you've been buying it every week for the last year, you've spent about $100 on water, oil, and starch, and you probably had a rough idea going in. 12 cents an ounce. Hold on to that number, because by the end of this video, you'll hear about a jar with no dairy in it charging 4 times that. The next one costs almost twice as much, and the word printed on the front of it is the whole problem. Brand number 7, Prego Homestyle Alfredo. Homestyle. That's the word Campbell's chose. It's the 22-ounce jar, $3.57 at Walmart, and it lands in a lot of older kitchens specifically because the brand feels safe. That trust is doing heavy lifting here. Turn the package around. The first ingredient is water. Cream is second, and I'll give them credit. Butter is actually in there. But right behind it comes modified food starch, then enzyme-modified egg yolks, then soybean and canola oil. And further down, there's something called enzyme-modified cheese paste, which is exactly what it sounds like, cheese that's been treated with enzymes to punch up the flavor signal for a fraction of what real aged Parmesan costs. That's the label game. Homestyle on the front, enzyme-modified cheese paste on the back. Nobody's home kitchen has enzyme-modified cheese paste in it. Your grandmother did not keep a jar of it next to the flour. That ingredient exists for one reason, which is that real aged Parmesan is slow and expensive, and a treated cheese concentrate hits a similar flavor note for far less money. Texture-wise, it's thicker than the store brand, and it clings better because starch and egg yolk hold a sauce together beautifully. It also goes slightly gummy as it sits, and it firms up in the fridge into something you can almost slice. Real butter and cream do not do that. Butter and cream set soft and melt the second they hit heat. Now, here's a detail that stayed with me. Campbell's owns Prego. Campbell's also owns Rao's now, which is the #1 brand on the Real list at the end of this video. Same company, two completely different decisions about what goes in the jar, sold in the same aisle, about 8 feet apart. Nobody is forcing anybody's hand here. These are choices about price points. At $3.57 a week, that's about $186 a year. That's not a fortune. That is the part that bothers me, though. You're paying a brand name premium for the word homestyle, and homestyle is the one thing this jar is not. Now, the next brand has something in it that I genuinely did not expect to find in a savory white sauce. Brand number 6, Classico Creamy Alfredo. This is the one in the nice-looking jar. Classico ships in that squat Mason-style jar with the region name on the label, which is a beautiful piece of design work because the whole thing signals small Italian producer. It's Kraft Heinz, 15 ounces, $2.88 at Walmart. And credit where it's due, this one actually leads with cream. Cream first, water second. That is better than the last 2 jars. And if I stopped reading there, I'd have put it on the good list. So why is it here? Keep reading. Enzyme-modified egg yolks and modified cornstarch both land ahead of the butter. And then, near the end, high maltose corn syrup solids. That is corn syrup. In Alfredo sauce, not in a marinara where you might argue it's balancing acidity, in a butter and cheese sauce where there is nothing sour to balance. It's there to round the edges and make the sauce taste fuller than its fat content earns. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It eats sweet, and now you know why. There's a faint candied note on the finish that people describe as tasting fake without being able to put a finger on it. That's what a sweetener does in a savory sauce. It fills the hole where fat should be because your tongue reads sweetness and richness through some of the same wiring. And there's a second thing happening on that label. Enzyme-modified egg yolk shows up in 5 of the 8 jars in this video. It's the industry's standard fix for a sauce that needs to look emulsified without carrying the butter fat that would normally do the emulsifying. Once you know the phrase, you'll start seeing it on half the white sauces in the aisle. $2.88 a week is about $150 a year for a jar with corn syrup solids in it and butter sitting 6th. If this is already saving you from a bad shop, do me a favor and hit subscribe. We publish one of these every week. Now the next brand is the one people defend in the comments, and they defend it hard. Brand number 5, Ragu Classic Alfredo, 4.7 stars, over 3,000 ratings. I read through them and people love this sauce. One verified buyer called it the closest thing to homemade flavor. Another said she uses it instead of butter and milk in her mashed potatoes. So let's turn the jar around. Water, then soybean oil, then cream, then Parmesan cheese, modified cornstarch, and enzyme-modified egg yolk. There is no butter in this product. None. Not listed low, not listed as an afterthought. It is not in there. The second heaviest thing in a jar of Alfredo sauce is soybean oil. And the front of the label says made with real cheese, which is true and completely beside the point. 16 ounces, $2.24 at Walmart, 14 cents an ounce. About $116 a year if it's your weekly jar. And get this, it works. That's what makes it hard. Soybean oil, cornstarch, and enzyme-modified egg yolk build a sauce that clings to fettuccine and never breaks, no matter how hot your pan gets. Real butter and cream will break if you push them. This will not. Stability is the whole reason the shortcut exists. So the people in those reviews are not wrong about how it behaves. They're just describing an engineered substitute and calling it homemade. And I understand why. If the only Alfredo you've had in 20 years came out of a jar, then this is what Alfredo tastes like to you. That is not a knock on anybody's palate. That's a formula doing exactly what it was designed to do. One more thing about who's behind it. Ragu and Bertolli both belong to Mizkan, a Japanese company that bought the two brands from Unilever in 2014 for $2.15 billion, which is worth holding on to for about 90 seconds because the next brand on this list comes out of the same corporate house and takes the completely opposite approach to the label. But this next one puts its claim right on the front of the jar, in writing, and then contradicts it on the back. Brand number 4, Bertolli Classic Alfredo with aged Parmesan. 10,000 of these sold in a single day. 4.7 stars, 13,000 ratings. This is the middle shelf jar people reach for when they've decided the store brand isn't good enough. 15 ounces, $2.98 at Walmart. Here's what the front of this package says, word for word. Made with fresh cream and real butter. Now turn it around. Water, cream, butter, sweet cream and salt, Parmesan cheese, and then soybean oil, modified food starch, and enzyme-modified egg yolk. So the claim is true. There is fresh cream and there is real butter in that jar. The claim is also doing a magic trick because it tells you what's in there and says nothing about what else is in there. Water leads. Soybean oil sits directly behind the Parmesan, and you can't tell any of that from the front because no rule requires them to say it. That is the premium costume. Not a lie, a carefully framed truth printed in a nice serif font priced $1 above the store brand. And $1 is exactly the right amount. Enough to feel like an upgrade at the register, small enough that nobody stops to check whether they actually got one. Same parent company as Ragu, by the way. Mizkan owns both. Ragu leaves the butter out entirely and says nothing about it. Bertolli puts a little butter in and prints it on the front in a serif font. 2 brands, 1 owner, 1 shelf, 2 different ways to work the same aisle. It tastes better than the cheap jars. It should. There is actual butter fat in it. It also sets up firm in the fridge in a way real cream never does. And that firmness is the starch talking, not the dairy. And the word Tuscan is on there too, which is a nice touch since Alfredo is a Roman dish and always has been. Nobody in Tuscany is claiming it. $2.98 a week is about $155 a year. Remember that price because one of the real brands later cost the same per ounce as something with no dairy in it whatsoever. Brand number 3, Knorr Creamy Alfredo Pasta Sauce Mix. This one is not a jar, it's the little paper pouch hanging on the peg hook next to the pasta, $1.82 at Walmart for 1.6 ounces. And it's in more older kitchens than anybody wants to admit, because it's been on that hook for decades. Read the pouch, maltodextrin, cornstarch, wheat flour, then a blend of Parmesan, Romano, cheddar, and blue cheeses, then salt, whey protein concentrate, hydrolyzed corn protein, palm oil, natural flavor from soy, non-fat dry milk, sodium caseinate, and soybean oil. Maltodextrin is first. That's a starch sugar made from corn, and it is the single heaviest thing in the packet. Now flip to the directions, and this is the part that got me. It tells you to add 1 3/4 cups of milk and 1 tablespoon of butter. So the only real dairy fat in the finished sauce is the dairy you bought separately and put in yourself. They sold you $1.82 of thickener and cheese powder, and you supply the butter. The finished sauce is chalky if you rush it and gluey if you don't. That's the wheat flour and the maltodextrin talking, not the cheese. And there's hydrolyzed corn protein and yeast-adjacent flavor work in there doing the savory heavy lifting, which is why it tastes intensely of something without tasting much like Parmesan. Now, I want to be fair about one thing. Because you're adding real milk and real butter at the stove, the finished pan of sauce can genuinely have more real dairy in it than some of the jars we've already covered. That is a strange sentence to say out loud. The powder is the least honest product here, and the finished dish might not be the worst one. The problem is what you're paying for. You're buying starch, salt, and cheese powder at $18.20 a pound, and then buying the actual food separately. $95 a year on the pouches, before the milk and the butter you're buying to make them work. But this next one made me actually stop in the aisle because it costs 3.5 times the store brand, brand number 2. Primal Kitchen Creamy Cashew Alfredo. This is the jar on the top shelf in the health section, the one with the clean minimal label and the words no dairy right on the front. 16 ounces, $6.96 at Walmart. 3.5 times the great value jar sitting a few aisles away. And I want to be fair here, because this brand is not hiding anything. It says no dairy, it says vegan, that is honest labeling, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. So look at what you're paying $7 for. Water, cashew butter, avocado oil, tapioca starch, roasted garlic, then 2% or less of everything else. Water, ground cashews, oil, and starch. That's the product. It's a perfectly fine cashew sauce. It is not Alfredo, and it costs nearly 4 times what the store brand charges for a jar that at least has cream in it. The other thing worth knowing, Primal Kitchen was founded by Mark Sisson and Morgan Buehler as an independent, better-for-you brand. In November of 2018, Kraft Heinz agreed to buy it for about $200 million. So the clean label jar on the top shelf and the Classico jar 3 shelves down now answer to the same company. And that is the part I keep chewing on. This jar gets bought by people who are specifically trying to eat fewer processed ingredients. They read labels harder than anybody. They pay a premium on purpose. And what they're getting for 44 cents an ounce is water, ground nuts, oil, and tapioca starch, which is a shorter list than the cheap jars, but not a fundamentally different idea. Take out the expensive fat, rebuild the texture with starch, charge more for it, not less. If you cannot eat dairy, this is a reasonable product, and I'm not going to talk you out of it. If you can eat dairy and you bought it because the label looked cleaner than the others, you paid 3.5 times the store brand for a sauce with less butterfat in it than the store brand, which is zero. $7 a week is $362 a year on cashew paste and avocado oil. And the final skip brand is the one I'd be most annoyed to find in my own fridge, because it isn't food, it's diet theater. Brand number 1, Walden Farms Calorie-Free Alfredo Sauce, 12 ounces, $5.99 on Walden Farms' own website. Marketed as calorie-free, fat-free, sugar-free, dairy-free, and keto-friendly. Here is the entire ingredient list. Water, salt, corn fiber, natural flavors, microcrystalline cellulose, xanthan gum, propylene glycol alginate, garlic puree, lactic acid, titanium dioxide, sodium citrate, onion puree, yeast extract, gellan gum, black pepper, fruit and vegetable juice for color. There is no cream in it, no butter, no cheese, and no milk of any kind. The white color you're looking at in that jar is titanium dioxide, which is a pigment. It's the same white used in paint and sunscreen. It's in there so the sauce photographs like Alfredo. And the calorie-free claim is completely legal. Federal Rule 101.60 says a food can be labeled calorie-free if it has under 5 calories per serving. Build a sauce out of water, cellulose, and gums, and you clear that bar easily because there's nothing in it to burn. In Europe, titanium dioxide has been banned as a food additive since August of 2022, after the European Food Safety Authority said it could no longer rule out damage to DNA. Just not here. It's slick, slightly rubbery, and it does not melt because there is no fat in it to melt. Warm it in a pan and it stays exactly the same as it was in the jar, just hotter. Every other product in this video at least changes state on the stove. Here's what makes this the one I'd be angriest to find in my own fridge. Everything else on the skip list at least tried. They cut corners and swapped fat for oil, but there was food in there somewhere. This is thickened, tinted, flavored water with the word Alfredo on it, sold at 50 cents an ounce. That is 4 times the great value jar per ounce, and it is the same per ounce as a sauce from a Manhattan restaurant that has been open since 1896. And the people buying it are usually trying to do something good for themselves. That's the part that lands wrong. Diet theater aimed at somebody making an effort. $6 a week is $311 a year on colored water. Which brings me to the test. Grab whatever Alfredo you have in the fridge right now. You need a mug, a spoon, and hot tap water. Put 1 heaping tablespoon of the sauce in the mug. Add about a 1/4 cup of very hot water. Stir it for 10 seconds, then leave it alone for 1 minute. Here's what a good result looks like. The sauce thins out almost immediately, goes a soft pale yellow, and within a minute you see tiny beads of melted fat gathering on the surface. That's butter fat. Fat floats. That always floats. Here's what a bad result looks like. It stays thick. It clings to the spoon in one lump instead of dissolving. The color stays flat, chalky white, and the surface stays perfectly clean with nothing rising to the top. That clean surface is your answer. If nothing floats up, there wasn't enough fat in there to float. What's holding that sauce together is starch and gums get chosen precisely because they don't separate. That's the entire reason a manufacturer reaches for them. A real butter and cream sauce can break. An engineered one is built so it never will. Run this on the jar you already own before you buy another one. It takes less time than boiling the pasta. Now, if you've made it this far, here's the payoff. 3 Alfredo brands that are actually what they say they are, made with real butter and real cream, with no oil hiding in the middle of the list. And the best of the 3 costs the same per ounce as that jar of colored water we just talked about. Same money, completely different product. Real brand number 3. Mezzetta Family Recipes Alfredo. In 1935, an Italian immigrant named Giuseppe Luigi Mezzetta opened a small import shop in San Francisco's North Beach. He had come over from Emilia-Romagna in 1911, which is the exact part of Italy that Parmigiano Reggiano comes from. The company is still in the family. His great-grandson Jeff is the 4th generation to run it. That origin matters here for one specific reason. Look at what's in the jar. Water, cream, then Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, then butter, then Pecorino Romano. Actual Parmigiano Reggiano listed 3rd ahead of the butter. That's the expensive decision. Domestic Parmesan is cheaper than the real Italian stuff by a wide margin. And once you're paying for a protected origin cheese that sat in a warehouse for a year, you've given up most of your room to compete on price. There's no vegetable oil anywhere in this jar. Not sunflower, not soybean, not canola. The Pecorino Romano in there is sheep's milk, which is the second half of how a Roman sauce is supposed to taste. Parmigiano brings the nutty side, Pecorino brings the salt and the sharpness. Most jars in this aisle use a domestic Romano made from cow's milk instead, because sheep's milk costs more and yields less. I'll be straight with you though. Water is still the first ingredient here, and there is modified food starch in it. This is not a homemade sauce in a jar. It's just an honest one. And the honesty shows up in what's missing. No oil, no corn syrup, no cheese paste. People who buy it tend to describe it the same way. It tastes like real cheese rather than cheese flavor, and it's saltier and sharper than the mass market jars, which is what actual Pecorino does to a sauce. 14.5 ounces, $7.99 on Mezzetta's own site, and it turns up in a lot of regional chains. Look for the short glass jar with the plain cream-colored label. It's boring in the best possible way. Real brand number 2, Carboni Alfredo. Carboni is a restaurant in Greenwich Village that opened in 2013 from Mario Carboni, Rich Teresi, and Jeff Zelaznik. It became the hardest reservation in New York. In 2021, they started putting their sauces in jars, quietly, in a handful of East Coast stores. Turn it around. Light cream first, water second, butter third, then Parmesan and Romano, salted egg yolk, black pepper, and further down, actual Parmigiano Reggiano. Cream first, butter third, and no oil in the entire list. That's the shape a real one takes, and it's the shape almost nothing else on that shelf has. There is modified cornstarch and xanthan gum in the back half, and I'd rather there weren't. But there's a difference between a little starch keeping a jarred sauce stable and building the whole product out of starch and calling the result Alfredo. Here's why this one is satisfying after the skip list. Carbone had every excuse to cut the corner. They could have put a famous name on a jar of water, oil, and starch, charged $9, and moved units on the strength of the name alone. Plenty of celebrity food lines do exactly that. They put the cream in first instead. And look at where that lands it. 53 cents an ounce for a restaurant recipe with cream and butter at the top, against 44 cents an ounce for water, cashews, and oil. 9 cents an ounce apart. That is the entire price gap between the real thing and the health aisle jar, which tells you the premium you pay in this aisle is mostly not going into the fat. People who buy it keep saying the same thing. It tastes like the sauce at a real Italian-American restaurant, and it's the one they stopped experimenting after. 15 ounces, $7.97 at Walmart, which honestly surprised me for a restaurant brand. It's the dark jar with the black and gold label. And if this ranking is useful, hit the like button. It really helps the channel cut through the algorithm. Real brand number 1, Rao's Homemade Alfredo. In 1896, an immigrant from Puglia, Italy named Charles Ragu bought a small tavern in East Harlem. That tavern became the restaurant with 10 tables that people spend decades trying to get into. In 1992, Frank Pellegrino Sr. got tired of turning customers away and decided to put the sauce in jars so people could eat it at home. Here's the list. Light cream, then water, then butter, then Parmesan and Romano cheese. That's your top 4. No vegetable oil anywhere, no added sugar. There is a small amount of modified food starch and xanthan gum down in the under 2% section, and that's the honest trade-off for something that has to sit on a shelf. Cream first, butter third. That's your check. You do not need to memorize anything else in this video. Butterfat is the expensive ingredient, and they put it at the top of the list instead of replacing it with oil. Taste it against the $2 jar sometime, and the difference is not subtle. It coats a noodle instead of sliding off it. It goes slightly grainy at the edges the way a real cheese sauce does, and it will break if you boil it hard, which is not a defect. That's what dairy fat does when you push it too far. The jars that never break are the ones that had help. One thing you should know, Rao's is not a small family operation anymore. Campbell's bought its parent company in March of 2024 for $2.7 billion. The recipe is held so far. Keep reading that label anyway, because an ownership change is exactly how an ingredient list quietly gets rewritten. 15 ounces, $7.52 at Walmart. That works out to almost exactly 50 cents an ounce, the same per ounce as the Walden Farms jar with no dairy in it at all. And here's the kicker. You could make this yourself with a stick of butter, a cup of heavy cream, and a wedge of real Parmesan in about 10 minutes. We'll put the method in the description. Here's the one thing worth remembering. There is no federal definition of Alfredo sauce, but there are federal definitions of butter, cream, and Parmesan, which means the ingredient order on the back is the only sentence on that package that has to be true. The worst of the bunch is Walden Farms, charging $6 for water, gums, and a white pigment Europe pulled off its shelves 4 years ago. The best is Rao's, which leads with cream and butter and costs the same per ounce as that jar of colored water. So here's your move on the next grocery run. Turn the jar around and read the first 3 ingredients. If water is first and oil shows up before the cheese, put it back. Next week we found something in a national brand of shredded cheese that changed how I look at pizza night, and it has nothing to do with the cheese itself. Drop the brand you still trust in the comments. We're building the list together. Hit subscribe if this changed how you shop today. We'll see you in the next aisle.